Olacak gibi.
Sanki olacak gibi, evet.
Hı hı.
Oluyor gibi şey de çıktı, tamam.
Hı hı.
Tamam, o zaman başlayabiliriz. İlke sen de başladın mı kayda? Tamam.
Evet hocam kaydediyoruz.
Evet, ben çok kısa bir Türkçe giriş yapacağım. Ondan sonra İngilizce devam edeceğiz. Hoş geldiniz. Bu yılki Docomomo Türkiye Bilanço 2024 etkinliklerinin üçüncüsünde birlikteyiz. Teknoloji Komitesi düzenliyor. Çarşamba akşamı da Eğitim ve Kuram Komitesi'nin düzenlediği dördüncü bilançoyla bu yılki seriyi tamamlayacağız. Hepinize hoş geldiniz diyorum. Okay, welcome to the statement meetings of Docomo Turkey. This is the third one organized by the Technology Committee, and today we will be looking at on the 100th year of the Lausanne Peace Treaty and the great population exchange in 1924. We will be looking at population exchange, housing and settlements with a focus on technology. Today's moderator is Ayşegül Özer from the Technology Committee. She was, well, she is the, she made the idea, let me say, for this meeting. I will briefly introduce her and then give the floor to her. Ayşegül Özer completed her undergraduate studies in architecture and her master's degree in restoration at Istanbul Technical University. She pursued her PhD in the field of heritage conservation at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki between 2004 and 2008, supported by a scholarship from the State Scholarships Foundation of Greece. Her doctoral research, very conveniently with this subject, focused on a comparative study of conservation policies for the architectural heritage of population exchange communities in Turkey and Greece, with specific case studies in Ayvalık and Retimno. She volunteered in post-earthquake damage assessment, conservation and emergency response projects in Turkey and India. She worked in several international projects, including the İzmit Orhan Gazi Mosque, the UNESCO Istanbul Fenerbalat Rehabilitation Program, the Historic Bridges Conservation Project in the Marmara region, and Kayseri Sümerbank Textile Factory. And the World Heritage, UNESCO World Heritage Site Süleymaniye Conservation Project. She also completed adaptive reuse projects for the Asomaton Tisio Hamam in Athens and the conservation of the Kadı Mosque in Altınova, Balıkesir. Her work on the Hakkı Bey office building earned the first prize from the Foundation of the Preservation of Turkey's Monuments, Environment and Tourism Assets, Taç Foundation. She's a member of Docomomo and ICOMOS, and she teaches courses on architectural conservation, documentation, adaptive reuse, and Istanbul studies, currently at Özyeğin University in Istanbul. Yes, Ayşegül, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nilüfer Güney. I want to thank to Dokuma Turkey for the organization of this program. I think it's very meaningful in the 100 years to talk about the exchange and its heritage values for both states. We are today honored by the contribution of two distinguished professors, Vilma Hastoğlu Martinidi and Ali Cengiz Han, and I will be making a small introduction about the exchange process, and then give the floor to firstly Ms. Hastoğlu Martinidi and then to Professor Ali Cengiz Khan about for their speeches. So I have a very small slide to show, a very small organized slide. If you allow me to share it with you. Okay. Right. The exchange of population, which was agreed in the Lausanne Treaty in 1923, was not the first exchange of population in this wide geography. I think the Russia-Turkish War was can be the very beginning of these agreements regarding population movements, because after the war, there was an agreement between the Russian state and the Ottoman state for exchanging around 40,000 people in the Black Sea region, Greek Orthodox, with Caucasian Turks in the Caucasian region. Later, the Balkan Wars had a huge impact on the population movements in this wide region again. And we come across with agreements between Bulgaria and Ottoman Empire, Greece and Bulgaria. And finally, before the start of the World War I, there is an agreement between the Ottoman state and the Greek state for exchanging population, which has never been implemented. These years are very important, as we said, regarding the population movements. There are movements from all Balkans to Anatolia, from Anatolia to regions of the Balkans due to the changes of territories and, of course, local conflicts. And the expansion of the new Greek state also affects widely this population movement. After the World War I, when the Sèvres Agreement is agreed and there is an outmarch towards Anatolia, there is also again a population movement within Anatolia. Many refugees exist in the borders of Misak-ı Milli, around 900,000. And we also come across with cases abandoning Anatolia for seeking refuge in other land. At the end of the war, this population movement happens to be with the fleeing Greek Orthodox population. We talk about huge numbers, close to 1 million, which in the first year trying to refuge from Anatolia and reach Greek lands. And these populations are mostly Greek Orthodox, but also Armenians and Jews, which had abounded in the first years after the war was over. Soon after the first signs of the agreement, we come across with Nansen's plan, who makes dialogues with Greek state and also comes to Turkey for meeting the Ankara government. He cannot pursue an official meeting with the Ankara government till the Lausanne Treaty. And during the Lausanne Treaty, when the subject of exchange of populations come as a matter in the table, Inan refers that they have rejected nonsense meetings till that time because they haven't found it as official as it should be. Meanwhile, of course, all these years, they are very painful for people of both lands. Many people are without homes or refugees without homes, and both states answer to the treaty meetings with very difficult conditions behind. The Greek state is in that time dealing with severe population movement, refugee movement already in their lands. On the other hand, the Turkish state is dealing with the land worn out from the war and new populations expecting to arrive, in addition to the Muhajirs of the Balkan Wars and the Caucasian Wars. In the agreement of the Lausanne Treaty, the Greek Orthodox population in Anatolia is exchanged with the Muslim population in Greece, except of Istanbul and the Eastern Thrace. In Turkey, the arrangement of settling was mostly planned through the ministry. And in Greece, there was a special commission, Andalagis, which was established for that. Both states has agreed on to the existence of a mixed committee, which was going to basically control the whole movement process. The Mibadis, which is basically a Turkish word, but settles very well to the exchange population of the Lausanne Treaty, The Mubadis, they had right to carry with them their movable properties, and they had to register their immovable properties in the lands they were leaving behind. Unfortunately, there has been lots of cases regarding injustice against the movable properties of the exchange population as well. We know from the records, for instance, lots of Greek Orthodox exchange population could not reach their accounts in French banks, and they never received their money from the banks before they left from Turkey. And today we are going to be talking mostly about new settlements. Thus, in the initial plan of the Turkish state, the exchange was based on the reuse of abandoned properties, but due to the lack of numbers available for the new coming population, Turkey also moved with the plan, like Greece, for implementing new settlement areas. There is a small difference in this sense between two states, how they have handled the immovable properties. In Greece, the financing is mostly taken from international banks and financing system. Greece goes for under a huge amount of debt for this process, and in Turkey, mostly internal means are try to be used, and there are very few cases causing collaboration or resulting collaboration of banks like in Sakarya and some companies like in Eskişehir, which have founded implementations on both sides. This can be, I think, a very small introduction for the outline of the context. It was a huge event for both states, and I think it still affects the cultural life of both states. We cannot disconnect the heritage that moving populations brought to their new destinations. This is very important for today's cultural heritage, popular cultural heritage we have on both states, but also the heritage that they have left behind as historical heritage, in addition to the constructions they have created, reminding us all that periods of hard work and troubled times of those two nations. I'm going to give the floor to Ms. Hatsoğlu Martinidi. Ms. Hatsoğlu Martinidi is an architect professor emerita of the School of Architecture in Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, Greece. Her fields of work include planning history, modernization, and heritage preservation in Greece and in Eastern Mediterranean cities. She authored many books and articles and is a member of the editorial board of Planning Perspectives. She has lectured in European and US universities and has carried out many research projects, including Modscapes, Modernist Reinventions of the Rural Landscape, a European collaborative research project founded by the Third Joint Research Program dedicated to uses of the past of the humanities in the European research area, which is called HERA. The assessments report of architectural cultural heritage in Anatolia, with the Turkish Association for the Protection of Cultural Heritage, KMKD, and also TELES project, which is designing the City Museum of Wallace project, funded by EU's European Social Fund and the Greek Ministry of Education. So, Ms. Martinidi, the floor is yours.
You are muted, Vilma. Could you please unmute yourself?
Now you hear me. Okay. Thank you for the invitation. The meeting is very interesting as it is dedicating to this challenging rather subject of the refugee settlement and housing heritage. I will first let me make this share screen. Okay. Is it okay? Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it. It's
Okay.
there.
Then, this is the title of my presentation. And before I start talking about this, I would like to make a reference to my sources. This presentation is mainly based on the research that Aysegül already mentioned, carried out with my colleague Professor Cristina Pallini from the University of the Politecnico di Milano for the HIRA project, Modscape Modernist Reinventions of the Rural Landscape. And it is further completed with archival material from public and private holdings and field survey data. Well, the settlement of rural refugees of 1923 in northern Greece was an unprecedented undertaking which profoundly transformed this region, locus of traditional life in the late Ottoman era, into a modern rural landscape. It entailed a radical social and economic change, pushing for active state intervention in land reform, agricultural mechanization, and sanitation campaigns. The initial emergency opened the way to major public works, large-scale reclamation, road networks, extension of ports, and city planning. And it required a huge housing project with hundreds of new villages and mass construction of thousands of dwellings. In short, the state policies of these years influenced the evolution of the region to the present day. Yet,
Vilma, I am sorry. The slides are not
you don't
proceeding.
hear me.
Oh, we hear you, but we keep seeing the first slide. I don't know how that happened. Can you cancel the full screen mode maybe, and we can then see that?
Okay.
I don't understand, but
Now you see it? You see the succession now?
we are yes, now yes. Yes.
Okay, let's do it that way then.
Let's do it this way. Yes, please. Thank you.
Maybe I can. Okay. So this is the geographical distribution of refugees from different origins. Until 1930, there was 1,500,000 refugees coming to Greece, and 1,221,000 under the Lausanne Treaty. And at the time, I have to remind you that Greece's population was a little bit more than 5.5 million inhabitants. So this is the initial emergency images, the refugee shelter in tents in the plain of Thessaloniki, or stayed in various places within the city, like this photo with refugees in the Byzantine church of Agia Paraskevia. This is the typical, the standard type of village that was constructed at the time. Well, so I will talk about the architectural imprints of this project, which constitute until very recently a rather silent, let's say, non-enhanced heritage. The modest appearance of rural housing when compared to urban architecture, its dispersion across a vast region, and the alterations and demolitions occurred over time, overshadowed its innovative impact for the evolution of the region. I intend to highlight some major imprints of this multi-sided undertaking: the creation of the new rural settlement and the mass construction of houses. You can see the typical house of, a village built at the time. And here are some pictures of the houses, rural houses, constructed in various villages of the region. And I would like to address the following issues when I'm doing this highlighting: to identify what was the constitutive element and explain the logic of the creation of villages and houses, and also to underline the modernizing impact, record their current state, and assess their heritage value, if any, and there is a lot. Two preliminary remarks in order to better understand the range and the significance of this operation. Okay. The establishment of rural refuges in Greece was the largest resettlement scheme at the time, over 500,000 people. You can see here this special issue of the National Geographic magazine of 1925, where there is it hosts the extensive illustrated reportage by the well-known photographer Melville Chater, dedicated to what he calls the history's greater wreck. Second remark. Due to the gravity of the situation, the entire operation was entrusted to the Refugee Settlement Commission, let me hereafter call it RSC, a supranational body established by the League of Nations and was responsible mostly for the rural settlement, while the Ministry of Welfare took care of the urban one. The implementation of this project, settlements and buildings included, involved technical innovation by international companies, as we shall see. The RSC administered two foreign loans, 10 million pounds in 1924 and 9 million pounds in 1927. The average cost for each family was projected to be 152 pounds, and it is broken down, as you see, of which we should keep the first point of 66.5 pounds for the house. And refugees, of course, were indebted to the state for housing, equipment, and supplies, but most of their debts remained unpaid and were cancelled finally in the late 1940s. The emergence of a new type of village was the outcome of the colonization scheme envisioned by Premier Eleftherios Venizelos as a matter of national priority and aim at a thorough rural modernization. The applied village layout and form constitute ever since the prominent identity of rural settlements in northern Greece. The creation of more than 1,000 rural colonies in Macedonia and over 600 in Thrace out of the 2,085 homes in all Greece, gave rise to a dense network of villages in the sparsely populated countryside and were located in places suitable for farmers, livestock farmers, and fishermen. Of these colonies, 646 were completely new villages, and 442 were new quarters added to existing villages. In addition, a considerable number of refugee families were settled in existing villages abandoned by exchanged Muslims or Bulgarians. Today, some of these villages have evolved into small provincial towns. When possible, refugees were allocated to sites according to their village of origin in order for them to benefit from existing bonds. And new settlements were usually named after refugees' place of origin with the prefix neos or nea, which means new, like the one you can see here, the Uskoup village of origin, Skopos in Greece, and the new village of settlement, Neoskopos in Seros district. The implementation of the project was the work of the General Directorate of Colonization of Macedonia, headed by the chief agronomist Ioannis Karamanos, and employed over 1,000 people, including agronomists, surveyors, and health officers. The whole operation was complemented by a network of local colonization bureaus, health stations, and model architectural farms, after being divided into 17 districts. Now, about the type of the new village, the new settlement. The conception of this new rural settlement drew on the ongoing European debate about the pertinent models for the modernization of rural areas, and that I have to underline prior to Le Corbusier's ideas, proposals for the radiant village. Among the current models, or at the time, the compact village surrounded by farms allocated to the settlers was chosen as the standard settlement pattern. This model was warmly supported by the chairman of the RSC, Henry Morgenthau, as the most appropriate to the Greek rural tradition and effective for restoring community ties by means of its spatial proximity of habitation. Yet, the urgency and the scale of the operation conditioned the layout of the villas in practice. Instead of site-specific solution, the RSC adopted the standard gridiron plan of a simple and functional rationality, divided into small, regular, equal-sized lots allocated to the settlers. And here is the detail of a building block with the lots projected for a small house and with yard. Now, refugee villages differ radically from the region's pre-existing densely built villages with narrow, winding streets and traditional Balkan architecture, as you can see in these two photographs here. Yet, however, this uniform regular layout of refugee colonies was also different from that of their village of origin, as you can see in this comparison between the old village Hasakoi in Cappadocia and the new village of refugees Neaxos in the district of Yanitsa. And in a sense, this difference fostered the change of previous way of life and facilitated the assimilation of refugees into the new homeland. Despite the renewal of this building stock in the post-war years, the villages still retain the same irregular appearance, as you can see in the case of Neapela in the Yanitsa district, an appearance which had so much impressed the League of Nations officials when they visited the region in 1929. Now about the village core. According to the planning decree, each village plan provided for a central core for community facilities. That is, at the time, the church and the school, key institutions of collective life. Of course, today, as you can see in the case of Neoskopos, this core has developed into a real town center. Initially, the residents usually erected at their own expenses and care a small makeshift church, which also served as a school. These first churches often repeated the typology of the Three Ups Church, very widespread in the village of origin in Asia Minor. In the 60s, these initial buildings, churches, were replaced by imposing structures. In general, little of that early equipment survives today. Instead, the school buildings constitute still a remarkable heritage. Most of them are preserved and are still in service. They were erected by the Refugee Settlement Commission or by the inhabitants with the assistance of the RSC, even though this task was not included in RSC's contractual obligations. A total of 450 schools were built until 1929, of an architecture reflecting the neoclassical forms of the period. The state assumed responsibility for this building after 1929. Well, this is an additional heritage. The water towers, a necessary equipment for water supply for the localities, and they form a network of artifacts that visually signal the presence of the villages in the plains. Now about the dwellings. The settlement of so many refugees in a situation of housing shortage accelerated the modernization of the building sector, promoting standardization, prefabrication, and large-scale production. As you can see in this table, from 1922 to 1930, a total of circa 117,000 houses were distributed to circa 129,000 refugee families. Almost half were houses left by exchange Muslims and Bulgarians of a traditional Balkan architecture. The rest was entirely built by the RSC and the state, and had made the first mass production housing in Greece undertaken in conditions of humanitarian crisis. Here you can see some of the traditional exchangeable houses as stand in until 1990s. These are the photographs I have taken at that time. These are representative of the traditional Balkan architecture of the region. So what I have chosen to present to you in more details is a special category of refugee dwellings. This concerns the Derhatege housing project, which was carried out in 1924-25. And my intention is to highlight this particular heritage. It was an innovative project, even for linked to the emerging European modernism and to Bauhaus school. Why is that? Okay. Well, in 1924, on behalf of the Refugee Settlement Commission, the League of Nations held an international tender for 10,000 prefabricated rural dwellings in Macedonia and Thrace. The tender-winning company was the Dancing Building and Civil Engineering Company. You can see the original title in German on the top of the image. The company was funded for the purpose by Adolf Sommerfeld, a Berlin-based contractor specialized in standardized timber structure. And his chief architect, Fred Forbat, had experimented on prefabricated house systems with Walter Gropius. Let me briefly introduce to you the two Bauhausers. Adolf Sommerfeld had considerable experience in resettlement projects as an expert of the German Reparation Committee for the Reconstruction of France between 1919 and 1921. In Berlin, he carried out several projects, such as his famous residence, the first joint project of the Bauhaus, designed by Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer, the Zeldenform Onkel Tom Hütte, and the District Bürgerhaus in Berlin. In Mandatory Palestine in 1935, he was responsible for a housing development on Mount Carmel in Haifa with the architect Erich Mendelsohn. Of Jewish origin, he left Berlin in 1933 to return only after 1945. Fred Forbat, of Jewish Hungarian origin, joined Bauhaus School and collaborated with Walter Gropius in this particular Wabenbau construction system, which was a system of prefabricated house modules clustered together like cubes in a honeycomb to compose a housing ensemble. He was the chief architect of the Sommerfeld Company from 1925 to 1928. He became member of the Progressive Architecture Association, the Ring, in 1926, and in 1933, he joined the Ernst May Brigade in Moscow for the planning of this ill-fated Magnitogorsk town. In the same year, he left for Athens to attend the fourth Siam on the functional city. He emigrated to Sweden in 1938, and he was appointed in 1959 to the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. So, for Bat's plan for the HTG housing project, consisting in 3 types of timber frame dwellings. You can see the plan here and the size of each type. They had dimensions varying from 35 to 52 square meters according to family size. And they were fully standardized and prefabricated, and their implementation was scheduled within 6 months, from November 1924 to May 1925. Well, the wooden frames, you can see the prototypes here at the Sommerfeld woodworking plant in Pila, Poland. Well, the wooden frames were produced in Sommerfeld plants in Pila, in the then Free State of Dancing in Poland, and were shipped via Szczecin to Thessaloniki to the colonization department. The company had its headquarters in Belgrade to handle delivery and technical assistance. In November 1924, Forbat and Sommerfeld settled in Thessaloniki until the spring 1925 to coordinate the assembly of the kits. Their contract included the assembly of the wooden frames, the construction of the foundation and the roofs, while cladding of the frames proposed with rabbit's panel was to be carried out by the technical staff of the RSC and the refugees with materials available on the spot. Some 80 construction sites in the lowlands of Macedonia were set up, run by German foremen and employing refugees or Balkan workers. Despite delays, by summer 1925, a total of 9,673 timber-framed units were ready. However, the HTG project turned out to be more expensive than traditional building techniques and less adaptable to the conditions of site. Here is the image of a village near Chalkidiki, entirely built with the HTG dwellings, and forming this unique landscape of order and uniformity, a landscape of standardization. What is left today out of this? Very few HTG dwellings survive today. They are either isolated in various villages or small complexes in some of them. To my knowledge, they are not listed for conservation and serve today as auxiliary premises to the new houses erected by the residents after World War II. So as DHTG dwellings proved to be quite expensive, the RSC decided to entrust another 32,000 rural houses to small local businesses working under the control of Colonization Technical Service. These houses adopted also a standardized typology, albeit realized with traditional techniques, masonry foundation and walls, and a tiled roof, and were slightly bigger to receive larger families. Here you can see the plans as published in the Refugee Settlement Commission quarterly report in 1930. And you can see the archival photographs of the initial houses and some photographs of the RSC houses as they survive today in different villages. The speed of construction depended on available labor, and since many refugees were unemployed, the RSC provided them with supervisors, building materials, and money to build their own homes. Today, few survive of these dwellings survive. So to recapitulate, massive rural resettlement in northern Greece took the record time of 7 years. Constraints dictated by economic contingency and lack of time accelerated the modernization of the building sector, leaving, however, little room for the art of building, that is, for architecture, to fashion a more attractive image of a desired community that would facilitate assimilation to the new homeland. In this sense, rural colonization of northern Greece offered an extraordinary testing ground for assessing the heritage potential of the survived sites and buildings as a particular landscape of places for living and work. I will conclude with some thoughts on the enhancement of this heritage. The main idea is to figure out this refugee landscape within its broader physical setting as an open-air museum composed by the rich historical palimpsest of the region, within which various trails of cultural and educational interest could be organized in order to narrate to visitors a unitary history of the past and the present. This map, you can see here, exemplifies the idea. It depicts the articulation of rural heritage landscape in the plain of Axios River, renowned for its rich stratigraphy, such as the archaeological sites of Hellenistic Pella and its Roman colony, the Roman Via Egnatia, as evoked by the present road track, the Byzantine cemetery of the Bogomils, the Ottoman monuments of Yanitsa, and the Jewish estate of Modiano, currently converted into Balkan Wars Museum. Marked in black, you can see the reclaimed former marshes of Yanitsa, now farms allocated to refugees, and the typical refugee villages with the surviving dwellings, both DHTG and RSC, and facilities, which could be linked as a succession of nodes along a special heritage trail running parallel to Via Ignacia. Well, I will stop here and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Martinezzi. It has been very interesting to see the rural slants in that time, because in most of the cases we are more familiar with the city and refugee settlements like Prosvyaka in Athens. And these examples resemble probably similarities with also the Turkish cases, which we'll be hearing from Professor Ali Cengiz Khan. Let me we're going to take the questions at the final phase. So we'll continue with the presentation of Professor Cengiz Khan, but I want to represent him first.
Did I close it here?
Yes,
Oh, no.
you may close your sharing now.
You can click stop share, Vilma. It's easier maybe. You don't need to close the PowerPoint. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Ali Cengiz Khan is also an architect. He's architectural and urban historian, but also a poet. He has served as a dean to the MET Faculty of Architecture in 2012 until 2015. He's the founding dean of TEDÜ, Faculty of Architecture. Currently, he works and teaches at the Cappadocia University Faculty of Architecture, Design and Fine Arts. Mr. Cengiz Khan was the editor of the METÜ Journal of Faculty of Architecture between 2002 and 2013, and is one of the founders of Docomo Turkey. He teaches housing design, housing history, and architectural history at METÜ Department of Architecture, Interior Architecture at Bilkent University and Cappadocia University. His major books are Modernin Sanatı, The Hour of the Modern, Ankara'nın İlk Planı 1924-1925, Lörher Planı, Planning for the Capital Ankara, The 1924-25 Lörher Plans, Mübadele Konut ve Köyleri, Housing and Settlements for the Exchange of Populations, Bir Şehir Kurmak, Ankara 1923-1933, and with Müge Cengiz Khan, Construction of a New City, Ankara 1923-1933. His articles focus on architecture and urban histories of the early Turkish Republic, in which he specializes in housing design and history. So, the floor is yours, Professor.
Well, thank you very much. I hope my voice is clear.
It's perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, first I would like to thank you for the invitation. I think this meeting is quite important, and this anniversary or centennial of two populations moving in a very short time to different countries, to different locations, and having to manage with the daily life routines is quite drastic in terms of a crisis, which is still in the air, I think. Last year, there was an international meeting at Ürgüp Prokopi, and around 40 Greek scholars attended the meeting. There were several articles, presentations. Of course, it is quite sophisticated in terms of its impacts in the life of two nations. I think that there are quite different, striking differences between how two governments across the Aegean have handled the issue. And it is because of the politics of the era, mostly. As we all know, I will not summarize, but Turkey or the Ottoman Empire during the last years of its reign, starting from 1912 till the end of 1918. It was in wars, first the Balkan War, where she lost several countries in the Balkans, or several pieces of land and cultures there, leaving its citizens behind sometimes. And later, starting 1919, there was the War of Independence, which ended in 1922, so 3 years more. So in total, it is more than 10 years of war. Now, I will find it hard to compare the Ottoman Empire population in total before 1912 till 1923. It's hard to measure. I mean, of course, there are records about it, but when the war was over in 1922, the population of Turkey was about 13 million and something. And by the end of the war, even during the war, the last month of the war, migration between Greece and Turkey or Turkish Anatolia had already begun. So the new administrations had mutually to solve this huge problem of relocated populations. There are other problems, of course. It's not that there are problems of religion or several mistakes made during the exchange. Even on the Turkish counterpart, for instance, only after 2000, I think it was in 2008, that personal particular records of the administration of the Turkish Republic were released. So we were only able to track family records after 2008. So we should be waiting for more scholarly work even now. I will share my presentation.
Gelmedi hocam ama.
Gelmedi mi?
Gelmedi.
Gelmedi.
Sorry.
Geldi.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work. So shall I
Tekrar deneyin
try?
hocam isterseniz, evet.
I will try the PDF.
Şimdi görünüyor.
Solu kapatamadım ama.
Sayfalar arasında geçişe izin verecekse öyle de alabiliriz hocam.
So is this okay?
Şu anda dosya görünümünüz var. Şey açılmadı.
Öyle mi?
Evet, dosya ekranınızı görüyoruz.
Hay Allah.
Hocam isterseniz
Tamam.
PDF'ten sayfaları atlayarak gösterelim. O bizim için
Yani
görünebiliyor.
evet.
İsterseniz öyle yapalım. Hı hı.
Yani hayret bir şey. I'm
Arada
sorry for
oluyor.
this.
Evet, no problem.
So is this okay?
Evet, burada gayet iyi görünüyor ve çalışıyor sistem.
The right hand
Soru
side
bandı
bottom
olabildiğince daraltabilirseniz biraz daha büyüyebilir.
soru bantına müdahale
Sol
edemiyorum
bant,
maalesef.
tüm slaytları gördüğümüz bantı biraz şöyle iteleyerek daraltabilirsiniz.
Anladım. Anladım. So
Tamam.
this is better. Okay.
It's better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Perfect.
Well, I mean, of course, I know that this meeting is focused on the settlement policies and the housing themselves, the house plans themselves, and I will focus on them. How this became an interest for me, I think I have to mention that as well. I am a descendant of a family, of a mother who had migrated from Skopje, Üsküp, and Bitola, Manastır, in 1912. She was born in Izmir in 1923 after the war. And quite recently, I realized that my father, who was from Niğde, had also migrated just about two generations before from Romania. So I think it was also a topic in the family, around the family as well, several relatives, and I became quite interested in the topic. Another field was that in around 2000 and 2001, I was working on the campus of Silahterra for the first time, and I had the chance to decipher several documents there. And Silahterra, where the, I mean, it was a potential first factory for producing electricity in Istanbul, as we all know, and now working as a university. The architectural work there was from Hungary. I mean, the firm was from Hungary, and they had quite distinct plans, and of course a background theory about the planning concepts. Deciphering those and understanding more about forming a community as a factory, I was, already familiar with the family house plans for engineers, for workers, for chiefs, chief of the factory, whatsoever. And I had that in mind, of course. Well, this is a bit earlier. Actually, the Ottoman land had experienced several migrations when 1923 is considered. It was all an extended decades, maybe 4 decades of migrations. I mean, the Ottoman Empire and Ottoman land was living. This is from the land of Palestine. And of course, it is, as Ayşegül Özer remarked, the 1893 war is part of memory. Still, it is part of memory, where the Ottoman was at war with the Russians. The Roman dates were 1878, 1879, till 1893. So it is remembered, and what I have found during archival research is that all those loads, and it should have gained a memory through the administrative bodies, were remembered when in 1923 we were face to face with the great population exchange. This was quite interesting. It was reshaped by my colleagues, but this is, well, usually we compare the populations. However, here, population densities are compared in 1923, which means that the administrators by then, the early Republican people in the ministries, were quite intrigued about the densities of several regions within the remaining Turkish land. So, of course, on the left-hand side, it is Istanbul, it's Constantinople, and the change of population is shown from dark black to gray, dark black being 1914 and gray being 1923, which means that Istanbul was highly populated after the war even, because as we all know, it was the most modernized and centralized city of the Ottoman land. Shall we compare it what Vilma has already established for the case of Greece? In Turkey, well, we had no funds. As I have explained till now, the people had been at wars for more than 12 years, and there was decline of the state for about 50 or 60 more years still, as we all know. And another difference with the cases that Greek people lived, it's not only monetary, but the foundation of a new state in Turkey necessitated the move of the old administrators to change their hats as republicans, to move from Istanbul to Ankara, in times to learn the new alphabet, and all those changes were drastically happening at the same time. Of course, in the case of in the case of population exchange, the alphabet was not in the air. It would came in 1928, but it was in the air for the revolutionary. So an understanding of modernism or what was happening in the West, so-called West, was of prominent interest for the new administration and the new people there. So they spared a new ministry for the population exchange, which quite successfully actually accomplished its work in 2.5 years. It was established in 1923, and by the end of 1925, the Ministry of Population Exchange, Development and Settlement was abolished. There was a volunteer minister who is known for his later work as the Minister of Education, National Education. It was Mustafa Necati Ural that tried with the cadre, of course, all what was going to be maintained. And it seems that the strategic moves for decision of location of new cities. First I have to introduce that the potential the ministry underlined was under certain headings. First, well, they could build new houses, very particular houses around cities, just like infills. And secondly, they were, I will just pass through them in a minute. Maybe I have to wait for the pictures as well. But for the villages, the preliminary organization or observation was that they cared for the proximity of the new settlements to railroads. It was quite rational because they would be taken to there. I mean, the people would be taken to there by railroads. I mean, as well as the construction material. And of course, these new locations had the potential to be near water sources. They should have fields to distribute from the Ottoman main treasury. And of course, the very vital terms of dominant winds, fitness for orientation, I mean, of the villages was taken into consideration. And sometimes they cared for them being in old historic settlements, in the vicinity of those settlements, because especially the western land of Anatolia, which had, I mean, undergone or undertaken the load of the war, were demolished in terms of cities. I mean, the people were devastated, really. So teams were sent to the countryside. So we see certain initial observational croquis, which are around 1 to 5,000 scaled drawings, north and south directions, and they measured for the sizes of suitable land for settling new villages. Just a moment ago, I was going to summarize these. One tool was İktisadi Hane or economic house. We will see the plans for 4 houses under one single room, to develop common gardens, within common gardens first. Second kind is what we call kargir. It is a load-bearing house under single roof, and these are twin kargirs. But load-bearing means, in this case, usually in earlier times, in 1923 till 1925, 1926, mud bricks were used. So the available kind of brick making as a practice in the countryside was taken care of. And sometimes these twin houses were in post and lintel wooden frames. So the infills were adobe. And for third potential is Hu. Hu is a village house with walls made of adobe or reed. It is very humble. It is very costless. It was still being used in 1930s, 1940s in Turkish villages. We will see some early pictures. Usually plastered with soil or adobe sand, and a wooden roof covered with densely laid reeds and reeds on top was the final shape of the Hu. I mean, it means it is quite like hut or small hut. And finally, and this had also a potential. It was also mentioned by Ayşegül Hanım. There were vast, abundant houses and also abundant properties around urban lands, especially, or certain urbanized central Anatolian settlements as well. They were open to exchange through justified and mutually recognized and justified values. We call this envali metruke. Of course, there were several unjustful cases, which the archives also witnessed, and I'm also interested in. These are just 3 examples of whose. These are in total adobe and reed used on the walls inside the buildings, under the rooftop, or under the ceiling sometimes. But it is, of course, dependent on certain geographies like Adana, Cebeli Bereket, Mersin, higher lands of Antalya, and those regions. And by the way, I should also mention that one major thing at the start, what the ministry cared for was to divide Turkish Anatolia into certain regions. There were 10 regions in total. First is, for instance, the Northern Anatolia holding Sinop, Samsun, Ordu, Giresun, Gümüşhane, Trabzon, Amasya, Çorum, Tokat. Second is Tekfurdağı, Edirne, Gelibolu, Kırkkilise. Third is Balıkesir, which is a huge area. Fourth is İzmir, Manisa, Aydın, Menteşe, Afyon. So these are even with certain Orientals, they are either in the west or southeast, southwest, northern part of the country. The ministry thought that as an end result or output of common sense, that the new residents who had moved from Greece as farmers farming wheat and barley, for instance, or farming using vineyards, let's say, they could parallel and they could cooperate the new pieces of land or the new regions according to their original regions. So it would sound in more harmony when they settle in the new houses to continue their own farming production, especially. However, of course, there were several difficulties. I will not go into detail. Uh, People who were supposed to be relocated wanted to move with their families, with their larger families, or with their kinships. So several troubles, several difficulties were raised during the settling issue. Well, just to go into the details of the houses that are proposed, and this had a quite impact, I think. The architects behind these plans are not known, by the way, unfortunately. I think it is when we compare to Wilma's case. Well, first, there were no funds and there were no implementation of international guidance in the in the practice of making these villages, and so all were local. And as I mentioned at the start, these had certain precedents in the 1893 war or after war accomplishments as well. I will just draw attention to the plan of this case. This is a single house, by the way. And this is a more house of a welfare. It is larger. But what happened, what became an issue through these plans was the introduction of a new modern way of life. On the right-hand side, the twin house. In the twin house, although the early construction material is quite modest, water is, or tap water is for the first time introduced in the rural housing of Anatolia. With it comes, of course, the water closet, use of the water closet, whereas in very early settlements, starting from Cumalı Kızık around Bursa, we know that always the water is not element in the house, within the house. It is kept outside the house, however, in the courtyard garden, with the kitchen, of course. Of course, we know that the kitchen is a source or an agent of fire, always. So the general pattern in early and even 18th century rural housing of the Ottoman Empire was that they were kept outside the house. I think this novelty came from the design desk of the architect, whoever the architect is. But there might be links to Silahtara factory ground, because we see that there the worker house is similar with this two-room single house for a family. It's similar. So there are unknown or anonymous architects behind these new proposals. As I mentioned, I had gone through several number of folders and files when I made research in two years at the archive. This is one of the original plans, the real plans or real layout plans, I would consider. It's not a real site plan, of course, but it is 1 to 1,000, and well, it is in the west. I mean, as we know, Manisa is the neighbor of Izmir. It's not on the coast, but in the hinterland, and so this is the calculation of the ministry that they are imposing, thinking about 58 houses in the village, with 12 stores, one mosque, one village meeting room, guest house, one patrol station for the police or the gendarmerie, really, one school, common laundry, one mill, and 4 fountains. Well, graveyard and vineyards are also introduced, and they are quite close to the lands that the new settlers will be given, and they will be obliged to crop, to have crop. So this is, in a way, another anonymous way of imposing a new life. I would also, when seeing Vilma's examples in Turkish Anatolia, the model villages, what's called model villages, I don't know the reason why, but they were almost this size always. So small-sized villages of 50 to 60 houses each, sometimes half a model, where the number is 20, 28. So this gave the size of the model villages. Of course, this kind of a general organization within the state necessitated, well, of course, there is the, I mean, although it's meager, there's the budget, yes, but you should find certain contractors to build up the village. Neither of them are experienced firms. They are usually architects, and they undertake the task. And of course, starting from again 1890s, it was a fact that standardized house components were also produced. I mean, especially doors and windows. Window shades. They were produced in certain forest-populated areas, especially around Bolu, let's say, or Antalya high grounds, highlands, and they were transported to these villages. As yes, this is just to say that 1916, 1917's plan, as presidents from the Ottoman Empire administration are still under work. Of course, there are village centers which are holding, as I mentioned, the mosque, the school, and other amenities around. And there are even changes, for instance, the plans for buildings that would be used by the representative of the administration in the village were taken in another way. These are load-bearing buildings, I mean, adobe, but they are, I mean, in plan, they are quite humble as well. Quite interestingly, these two drawings were, I think, they should have remained in the archive by chance. They are just trying to describe the making of windows and window sashes, the sizes whatsoever. They are just certain hand drawings and croquis. Now, my book was published in 2004, and after 2004, the interest in the local findings or remnants of this period was among several scholars. Of course, with the 1999 Lozan Mübadilleri Vakfı seminar, the 3-day seminar in Istanbul, was a milestone, and several scholars, young scholars, were interested in the issue as well, as the governmental records were not so detailed, and they were not properly taken, or they might be still under closed circumstances even. We were more focused on my work in moving, detecting villages, for I had given certain names of those villages and of several practices as well. In 2005, I was able to focus on the case in Ayvalık. So how population exchange was shaped up in Ayvalık, around Ayvalık. Here, it's another scholar, and she has worked in the cases around Thrace, Edirne, Kırklareli, Tekirdağ region. And she has she has found certain plans. The left-hand side plans are her examples from a neighborhood, Beylik neighborhood. But when we compare it to my 4-house under single roof example, it is almost similar. So this is kind of a descendant plan, which is also repeated in 1930s and 1940s. Maybe it has started in 1880s and 1890s as well. This is another example she has detected. And well, this is another kind of twin, of course, but half twin perhaps. If you have a single roof over 2 units, then you have the chance to extend the building to the back, whereas this plan has no kind of extension. So it has longer lived because of the adaptations or the capability to adapt. This is another case. So one single room, there is a wardrobe inside, the kitchen, and a hallway. And of course, this is a more geographical dependent scheme or type, house type, where the life actually goes around in the garden, in the larger garden, rather than inside. The inside is used, I mean, overnight and during winter, especially. Um, Again, this is from Eres. She was lucky enough to photograph just a case, which reminds me of this larger case. I mean, in my archival work with certain modifications. The house is there still. Even, well, this is the nursery building, which was run in one of the villages by the administration, the government, I think. It also resembles this iconic case, whereas now mainly this is the upper floor, where on the lower floor this might be the first phase of the building, and then the upper floor is an extension, and it is just a mid-sofa, we call mid-sofa building, not a house especially, but it might be a building used for several functions. It is still standing in the village. And these are some examples from the work of Eres again, where post and lintel system with certain Adobe construction material is used. I mean, of course, when you use Adobe, if you are maintaining the building annually, it is perfect. It is perfect for climate. It is perfect for the budget as well. Uh, as soon as you look after it. Uh, well, I think I will have my final words in this text. Not only from the examples I have shown, but I think the modernity, or what's modern in these examples, lies in the program itself. There's a new scheme, new way of life that is proposed for the farmers, the villagers, via village plans as well as the house plans. It's not in the shape up or form. In this episode of Turkish Planning and Architecture, it seems that the Ministry of Population Exchange, Development and Construction has proved to make a thorough study and field work within its current capacities, though there were problems in finalizing village constructions with belated project competitions, poor workmanship and contractorship. The overall settlement activities are finalized in 1926. As I mentioned, the ministry was abolished in 1926. I think, of course, these are certain outputs that we can dwell on, but the early Republican administration seems to believe that the newly constructed model villages and rural settlements should be modern environments with running water inside the house, more organized city roads, city grids, and cityscape. Sanitation and welfare should be solved in a way. And the construction of these environments should rest on standardized procedures. Of course, before entering this process, what the ministry did initially at the first step was they developed several records of the past. They also elaborated new codes, rules, regulations, and directives, how these environments would be raised from the soil and how they would be organized. And we can now consider that the impact of the more than 500,000 Turkish population move to Anatolia was handled in a way to become in the most appropriate. I have been in the last 10 years recently working on the villages on the railroad to Ankara. They are also model villages, but in line with all these issues, they are more developed and articulated. We have worked on Temelli of 28 houses, which has a semicircle settlement plan, where the houses are not in load bearing, but in stone. And we have worked on also Etimeskut. We have not published about that as yet, but it is much more developed, maybe having the hand of Ernst Arnold Egli in the adobe house construction as well, which means that we also calculated and measured the qualities or more qualitative adobe bricks. We had lab encounters to understand adobe, and they were still there. They were quite rigid from 1928 on, and we have but not published about the issue. Thank you very much for listening. I think the last pictures will be some personal pictures of the people who moved from Greece to Turkey. These were shots on their arrival. On the files I have mentioned, the very particular family files. They are quite humble. And these are the biblio. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Cengiz Khan. It has been a enlightening speech, and I think the whole session has been very interesting by looking on the both states' policies over the same issue, basically, and to sum up some major commonnesses and differences. Maybe we can talk about that. The Turkish state was dealing with the exchange population issue within the framework of all the muhajir, all the refugee issue, while the Greek state was dealing with the minor Asia population, a huge number of minor Asia population, where the Turkish state was looking at the whole financing process as a local and national based project, trying to establish national means for dealing with financial means for dealing with the process. The Greek state went under huge amounts of crediting from abroad for the process. Another important issue that has been mentioned by Bima Hastoğlu and Mr. Cengiz Khan was that both states in the rural areas, they have implemented some simple modern housings for creating necessary housings for the exchange population, which was not basically the initial plan for the Turkish state and was obliged due to the lack of available housings for the coming population. And I think a very important issue, which basically pumps out, is how these two population movements have been a part of our daily life and our daily culture within time. In Greece, we may feel it more dominantly. I mean, in Greece, you feel the existence of minor Asian population in any kind of cultural production, where in Turkey, again, like the whole issue has been understood, it's handled within the whole population movement of a 50, 60 years of period in the 19th century. So it's included in the agenda of the Muhajirs, the Kafkas Muhajirs, Balkan Muhajirs, lots of different geographies. And it has been accepted as a part of this whole difficult population movement conditions. So I think now we can get our questions to our guests. And I think we have taken some written questions from the group. It would be great if we can ask them now. Because otherwise I will make some questions. Okay.
We don't have
Yes.
any questions from the audience. No, in the chat there is none. We can they can ask questions orally if they can raise hands,
Okay.
or I don't know, or we can discuss ourselves. Yeah, I think you asked my question about the rest of the moving population, basically. So since the 1870s, there has been quite some movement along the Balkans, especially.
That's true. One thing we didn't mention here was also handling of immovable properties which have value of heritage, historical heritage, but because our concept is based on modernity and modern heritage, we are always focusing on the new establishments. I was going to ask Mr. Cengiz Khan a question. In your researches regarding to different regions, we have seen usage of local technologies, but also in some cases, let's say more contemporary slants in the midst of technologies. Do you think this was this will have to do with the availability of material, or it was a central decision that affected the process?
Well, as you mentioned, it was dependent on the availability of not only material but also the craftsmanship. So as it was a matter of budget always, sometimes the villagers themselves were, obliged. They were not paid anything, but they were sort of invited to build their own housing with the material that that were given, and with the ustas, the master person guiding them. So it depended from region to region, but the most difficult thing is that the recording of these multi-local stories is not held anywhere, unfortunately. It's not even in the early diaries of people who moved to their new homelands. In another scope, as we know, and I have also partially witnessed this, the first generation of the exchanged population did never talk. It was a case of silence for them. Sometimes it was due to, now when you talk, when you narrate all what you have experienced all through those years, it's very hard. It's another crush on you. And this was coined in early seminars I mentioned in 1999, that it is a general aspect. I mean, I don't know what the case was in Greece, but in Turkey, the first generation members never talked. However, their children, their kids, were living in such an environment of silences, not talked issues, but they sensed that there was the tension in the family house, the household. I mean, especially the first generation. I mean, what I mean is when the exchange became the aged people around 20 to 30. If they do not talk, then the family cannot talk. Of course, there were more elderly ones who at times spoke in Turkish and in Greek, or in Greek and in Turkish, and they were underlining in the family that there was something hidden there. It was not a deliberate act, but it is part of the social memory of those families. In the seminar I mentioned that was held in September 2024, last year, there were third generation and fourth generation members of those families. They are eager to talk. They are eager to decipher and decode what was happening and to understand in a deeper way. And of course, we have only mentioned the housing physical environments, but the main load was in the culture itself, I think.
Thank you very much. Vilma? You have to open your voice. Okay.
Okay. If I may say, in Greece, it happens the other way around. I mean, people talk and talk a lot about it. And that was a very fortunate thing, because this way we have a rich collection of memoirs held in the Asia Minor Studies Center in Athens, which are the interviews taken at the time. I mean, in that period of the first decade, by the couple of Octave and Mel Pomerleau. And there is a rich source of information for the scholars or whatever people are interested in learning about the refugees coming to Greece at the time. And regardless if they were coming from rural or urban areas, they both were, I mean, eager to explain, to account about their village of origin or the place of origin. They felt they have lost with all the, I mean, relationships, neighbors, cultural habits, etc. And they also talk, as I was able to evidence myself in this recent research on refugee villages. They are eager to talk about their settlement in Greece, this first period of resettlement in a new homeland, how they faced the difficulties, how they were treated by other people, etc. One question I would like to ask on the occasion is if you have any, I mean, more concrete evidence about the exchangeable properties. I mean, in Greece, we have all these properties belonging to exchanged people became a property. That was, I think, a term of the Lausanne Treaty. That should happen the same way in Turkey. The exchangeable properties became property of the state, and the state was had the right to do whatever he thought was proper about them. And in Greece, there is a possibility. I mean, you can have access to these archives, these holdings, either in the countryside or in the urban areas. Is that the similar thing going on in Turkey? Could you have the, I mean, to trace the prior, I mean, inhabitants or proprietors of either fields or houses or whatever buildings, factories, manufacture things, etc.
May I? Wait.
I think it is similar in Turkey. If you are related with the property as an older or earlier owner, you can ask. It is also, I mean, the information is in the central archive. Earlier it was called Başbakanlık, but it is the
No, sorry to interrupt, but I meant as a researcher, not as a former,
archive of, well, of course,
as a former
yes, yes,
owner, as a researcher.
former people. Yes, it is not only true for only, I mean, exchanged populations, but also every citizen who has links from a former country. I mean, if there are descendants from Bulgaria or Romania or Greece, they could apply to the archive. I mean, I don't know how it ends, of course, but it is open to applications, and there are court resolutions regarding that as well. But as I mentioned, particular files of families and citizens were only recently, but by recently I mean about 15 years ago, they were open to public because they had to be classified. I have so far not heard about a new research or a new scholar working on them, but it is in the archive there. In my study, through my study work, I mean, about Ayvalık area, I had the impression that who had suffered most were the people who moved as they were given the land, the new, well, small factories or vast lands, but they could not hold it because there were several interferences like so-called mafia-like organizations during the time. It is a fact. It is a fact. So who have suffered the most were those poor uh, migrants from Greece that were given balanced properties in Turkey, but they couldn't defend their rights.
To answer to the comparative question, in Greece, the Euphoria keeps the ownership data. In here, it's a kind of notary system in Greece. In here, we have Tabu Kadastro department, which keeps the ownership data. There, parcel-based, you can follow the ownership history. But coming to your question, the first ministry that had the rights on immovable properties was the Hazine, the treasury. After the establishment of the Mübadele İskan İmar Vekaleti, the Ministry of Exchange, Development and Urbanization, this right moved to this next ministry. But the inventorization of immovable properties available for exchange started during the period of Lausanne Treaty. Rauf Orbay established a small commission and they started to move around Anatolia, trying to establish registrations and come with mathematical results of what is left and what can be exchangeable. Those data are also available in the archives. Professor Cengiz Khan has mentioned in the Cumhuriyet archives. You can find those listings. But if you are going to be searching parcel-based background, you shall be referring to Tabu Kadastro department for that, as you would too in Greece with the notary.
I doubt it. Anyhow.
Okay, but occupation issue that Ali Cengiz Khan has mentioned was a common issue for Greece and Turkey. In the cities, after the leavage of the Muslim or Greek populations, immediately many immovable properties were occupied by locals or by opportunists who didn't want to leave
Yes.
that is in
Greece?
Resim, no? Yes, they were occupying houses from the villages. They were coming to the town and occupying houses. That happened also in Ayvalık. So in cases of Resimler and Ayvalık, we have martyrs. They have, experienced that procedure, and that has been recorded for both states. How some immovable properties were, occupied and changed hands by falsing documents to others that had never owned them.
Well, it was a very troubled time,
Yes,
and things like that should happen. That's
yes,
true.
that's true.
But at least as far as I know, there is a specific service in Greece, which is called the property department, the state property service. where all the records of the exchangeable immovable properties, whether, I mean, rural or urban, all the records are held there.
Okay.
And there is not only, I mean, the titles of the former owner, I mean, name, occupation, date, etc. A draft plan of the property, either the field or the house, even for the house, and some the numbers giving the size of the house, and also the records for the provisional occupation or provisional housing of refugees in these empty properties for a limited time. So you can have access to them and find out who was living there before the exchange, etc. And all these properties were necessarily sold in auctions by the the National Bank of Greece. And we have also the certificates of these auctions and the records of the buyers, the new owners. And this is a very valuable, I mean, kind of information for a historian or a researcher to find out who were living there. I was able to find the exact documentation on my parents' house and for a number of houses in my neighborhood. So and I was wondering whether there is a similar service in. No.
They haven't gone through the auction process here. They were exchanged. That's why probably. I mean, there are some rentings that has been conducted by the Hazine Vekaleti, the Treasury Ministry, but that's before the establishment of Exchange Ministry. So the system is not the same. That's why we don't have an archive that is like the one you are mentioning, collecting only these elements.
Yes.
You know, in a
Yes,
certain
I
area.
see
Yeah.
what you mean.
Questions from the listeners? No? Okay. Then I shall give word to our commission, to Yıldız Hanım, Yıldız Salman, Nilüfer Batıray'ın, maybe to say some closing words, and then to thank everyone for their contribution today, to Ms. Hastoğlu especially and to Mr. Cengiz Khan especially. Okay, so would you like to add some words? Yıldız Hanım,
No,
Nilüfer Hanım?
I'm just going to thank the professors, Vilma Astol and Ali Cengiz Khan, for being here with us tonight. It has been a very interesting and inspiring conversation. Well, I mean, we all learned a lot. In Turkey and in Greece, there are many families with different histories of being refugees and moving from place to place. So it concerns most of us quite deeply. And it has been a very nice seminar, I think. Thank you very much. And, well, hope to
Photo.
see you again.
Nilüfer, photo.
Photo, yes. Kameralarınızı açabilirseniz we can take a photo. If you can open your cameras. Okay, çok da.